This video is supported by ExpressVPN. Well guys, we made it. This is the last video of 2020, and I mean, thank God, right? I mean, this year has just been one shot to the nuts after another. I mean, I know it's not like all of the problems of 2020 are gonna go away on January 1st. We're gonna be feeling the effects of this year for a long time to come. But on the upside, the memes, right? The memes have been amazing. I feel like it used to be whenever the world was going through a rough patch, we'd say, yeah, but we're gonna get some really great music out of this. I think today it's just the memes. So yeah, I'm not trying to downplay the problems that still lie ahead, but there are reasons to be hopeful for the coming year. There are a handful of vaccines that are being approved right now. It's probably gonna take halfway through the year before everybody who wants to get a vaccine can get one, but at least it feels like there's some kind of light at the end of the tunnel. There is a new presidential administration coming in January. I know for some people that's not a good thing, but at least it's a change. And sustainable technologies are continuing to move forward. The cost of solar and wind are plummeting, which is only accelerating the transition to a more sustainable grid. But perhaps nobody has more to look forward to in the next year than fans of electric vehicles, because, you know, we've been talking for a while now about how there's a tipping point coming in the industry, and it's starting to feel like there's reason to believe 2021 could be that year. So at the end of last year, we all celebrated the fact that we were entering a new decade, and of course there were all those well actually guys in the comments that were like, well actually the new decade doesn't start till 2021 because there was no year zero. Yeah, my comments are overflowing with well actually guys, and you know who you are. But for the purposes of this video, that's actually quite handy, because one of the best ways to frame what's going to happen in 2021 is to look back over the last 10 years and see just how much has changed. So let's start there. So on December 2010, just a month before we flipped over into 2011, Nissan announced the first generation Nissan Leaf, which was the first mass-produced electric car from a major automaker. Okay, does the EV1 count? I can hear you asking that already. So yeah, GM made an electric car back in the 90s, but I'm putting a hard asterisk on that one because it wasn't really fully production. They only made 2,500 of them. They didn't offer an option to buy it. You could only lease it. And of course, as we all know, when that term was up, they scrapped all of them and buried it. Can of worms opened. So yeah, for the purposes of this video, I'm gonna say that doesn't count. I'm also not counting compliance cars. Yeah, there were a handful of one-off EVs that the car companies would create just to kind of get around efficiency standards. Basically, environmental laws would get passed in certain states and in certain countries requiring a fleet average mile per gallon to be above a certain level. Well, instead of actually just making their cars more efficient, which was the whole point of the laws, a lot of these companies would just create an EV version of one of their models, and that itself would bring the average fleet efficiency up, and that was their kind of way around the law. These compliance cars were unadvertised, hard to find, half-assed retrofits that were only done to get around these laws. They were loophole cars. They were not serious efforts by a car company to make an electric option available to consumers. So no, I'm not going to count those. All right, fine. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. This is going to be a very US-centric video, and it's not because I don't care about any other countries around the world. It's just that if I listed every single EV in every single market around the world, this video would be hours long. So yes, I am bound to leave off some notable Chinese and European cars from this list, but I think that the point of the video still stands. Wait, where was I? The Leaf, right, okay. Well, so the Leaf is basically like the next logical step. The decade before that was kind of dominated by the emergence of hybrids like your Toyota Prius, your Honda Insight. These were obviously gasoline cars that had electric drivetrains and batteries that would help improve the gas mileage of those gas engines. And toward the end of the decade, you started to see plug-in hybrids come in. And plug-in hybrids, some people consider them to be electric cars because you do have to plug them in like an electric car. And they are more like electric cars with gas extenders on them. So like the Chevy Volt might fit that category. Some people might consider that to be a second EV that was out in 2011 as well. But it wasn't a pure EV, so I'm gonna put an asterisk on that one too. So yeah, it went gas drivetrains with electric backup to electric drivetrains with gas backup to a first pure electric with the Nissan Leaf. There is, of course, another electric car that was available in 2011, the Tesla Roadster. But I feel like this needs an asterisk too, because it wasn't really a mass market car. They only made 2,500 of them, and it was $250,000. It was a rich guy's toy. It wasn't really like a car for anybody. Okay, so how about another criteria for this video is that it has to be a car that the average-ish person could go and get, because there's always going to be rich guy toys out there. I'm talking about cars that the average person could go buy if they wanted to go electric. Okay. So really the Nissan Leaf was the only pure EV available in 2011 that the average person could go out and buy. And what did you get with the Nissan Leaf? Well, the Nissan Leaf cost $32,780 new, and it had a range of 73 miles. Just for reference, that Tesla Roadster got 244 miles, but again, $250,000. So you weren't going to be taking any road trips in the Nissan Leaf because you would have had to stop literally every hour to charge up, and oh, small problem, there was no real charging infrastructure at the time. And the Leaf was fine as a daily driver for people with short commutes, and it definitely has its fans. But yeah, that was pretty much your option 10 years ago. Now, as for the state of the EV world right now, that's a lot to talk about, and I'm sorry, I'm too lazy. Hang on, let me just get some help here.
Has a lot coming up as well. Wait, hold on a second. Why didn't I? Hello?
Hey, have you covered like just the general state of the EV world lately?
Oh, yeah, I'm working on that right now, actually.
Oh, sweet, cool. Well, I'll link to it.
Oh, cool. Yeah, send them on over.
Cool. You guys say I never do collaborations. Yeah, Ben and I have kind of teamed up on this. If you want to go over to his channel, put a little link right there. It'll also be down in the description. He's got a video talking about like where the EV world is right now in 2020 and how we kind of got here. And obviously I'll be covering the next year. So how about I move on with that? So let's start with Ford. When you talk about the old guard in the auto industry, it doesn't get much older than Ford. I mean, the company is named after the guy who invented the assembly line. Plus, Ford's kind of known for selling gigantic pickups and SUVs. I mean, if you've ever been coal rolled, there's like a 50% chance that it was from a Ford truck, and there was probably a sticker in the back window of Calvin pissing on a Chevy logo. Pretty much by any logic, Ford would be one of the very last companies to embrace electric cars, but they're not. They're actually coming in hot in 2021 with two EVs based on some of their most popular models, the Mustang and the F-150. First up is the Mustang Mach-e, which is Ford's iteration on the Mustang brand with a little more of a crossover style. It comes in rear-wheel drive or full-wheel drive, getting 255 horsepower or 459 horsepower respectively. That's 306 or 612 feet-pounds of torque, with a 210-mile range or 300 miles on the upgraded version. It features no door handles. You actually press a button to open it up. There's a big center console, a handy rotating knob for easier menu navigation while driving, and it starts at $45,000 before incentives, which Ford can still take advantage of. Then there's the F-150 electric. Now look, if it took some balls to electrify their Mustang brand, just imagine what it took to electrify the F-150. Not only is it the most popular selling truck in the United States, it's the most popular selling vehicle, full stop, in the United States. So this is a big deal, and they announced the electric F-150 with a promotional stunt where it pulled a train, which isn't the most impressive thing in the world when you know the physics behind it, but still, it's an impressive truck, and hey, it got people's attention. Details are still a little scarce on battery size, range, and specs in general, but Ford has touted that it's going to be a big step up for the F-150 lineup, including that it's going to be the fastest truck because of dual electric motors. It's going to have insane towing capacity due to the torque from those electric motors. It'll be super low maintenance, and it'll have a gigantic frunk, giving it more cargo space than any of the other trucks. So I'm including it here because their original plan was to launch it in 2021. It's looking like it's probably going to get pushed back into 2022, because of pandemic delays and whatnot. But I feel like it's worth including here because it really shows that Ford is actually taking electric vehicles seriously. And something else that's worth pointing out is that they do have a partnership with Rivian, where they're sharing battery and powertrain technologies. Who? What? Rivian? Sure, let's jump over to that for a second. Anybody who's been following EVs knows about Rivian at this point. You might be tempted to call them a new company, but they've actually been around since 2009. They've been slowly building up the company behind the scenes, partnering up with Ford, like I just mentioned, but also Amazon. A few years ago, they purchased an old Mitsubishi plant in Normal, Illinois, and have been retooling it for electric vehicles ever since. Back in August, they released a video showing that early trial production has already begun in the factory. They're just kind of working out the kinks before they expand to full production. Full production that is slated to begin, you guessed it, in 2021. So that means 12 years after the company's founding, we're finally going to see the fruits of their efforts with the R1T and the R1S. Starting with the R1T, their pickup, it's got some amazing specs like 750 horsepower, 11,000 pounds of towing capacity, a 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. For perspective, the Bugatti Veyron does that in 2.5 seconds, so we're in supercar territory here. It's got 400 miles of range and a quad motor tank turn available, so you can actually turn with all the wheels spinning in the opposite directions. And Rivian markets the R1T as an electric adventure vehicle, so with that in mind, they've loaded it up with some really cool options like a transverse gear tunnel under the cab for extra storage, a built-in air compressor, a mini fridge in the front center console, a shovel, and it has a pull-out kitchen that you can put in there. It's like you want to say that it has everything but the kitchen sink, but it's actually got a kitchen sink. And the R1S doesn't have quite the same bells and whistles that you see with the R1T. It's a more traditional Bronco-esque SUV, but it also boasts 750 horsepower, 800 foot-pounds of torque with 7,700 pounds of towing capacity, and a 410-mile range. The R1T starts at $67,000 and the R1S at $70,000, so not exactly on the economy side of the EV scale, but you do get a lot of car for that money. And if you're interested, you can reserve one on their site right now. Another sort of new brand that's coming out in 2021 is the Polestar 2. Polestar has traditionally been sort of the racing division of Volvo, but in 2017 they kind of broke off and formed their own company. They first started with the Polestar 1, which was a sporty two-door performance hybrid, but then they set to work on a fully electric version called the Polestar 2. This is actually one of the models I'm super interested in. I'm pretty psyched on this car, and it comes with some cool features, including dual permanent magnet alternating current synchronous motors in both the front and the rear axles, 408 horsepower, 487 foot-pounds of torque, a 275-mile range in the upper trim levels, 233 in the starting levels, 0 to 60 in 4.45 seconds, and a top speed of 125 miles an hour. So yeah, I wish it had a little bit better range, but it's a really well put together car in the Volvo tradition, so you know it's going to be really nice and low maintenance. And it starts at $59,900, which is still kind of up there in price, but when you're considering it's kind of competing in the luxury market, it's not too over the top. Something a little bit more down to earth in price, and with a greater range, is a Nissan Ariya. So yeah, Nissan, the Leaf guys, they're coming out with a new EV in 2021. This one is an SUV. It's obviously based on the Ariya concept that was first revealed in 2019, and though their first model is a 2022 model, they are planning on releasing it toward the end of 2021. And when they do, it'll feature 389 horsepower, 443 foot-pounds of torque, 0 to 60 in 5 seconds, top speed of 115 miles an hour, 15 to 17 cubic feet of cargo space, a range of a very respectable 300 miles, and it starts at $40,000, which is extremely cheap. Now, okay, look, I know it sounds like I'm in a massive EV bubble when I call a $40,000 car super cheap, but when you consider that the Model X is around $80,000 and the Jaguar I-Pace is $70,000, yeah, this is a huge step in the right direction. Now, there are two electric SUVs that are already at this price point. That's the Kia Niro and the Hyundai Kona, but they have significantly less range than this does. So Nissan has a pretty solid offering here. And when you factor in the cost of gas and maintenance, it's pretty competitive with regular SUVs. And since SUVs and crossovers are crazy popular right now, the more options in that space, the better. Hey, did you hear about Volkswagen? How they cheated on their emissions test? Dieselgate! Sorry, I just wanted to do that before the commenters did. So yeah, Volkswagen got into some trouble with their clean diesel scandal, and I know that's put a bad taste in the mouth for a lot of people, and they're just never going to buy Volkswagen again, but Volkswagen, because of all that, did turn hard into electric with their MEB platform. The first car to come out with this new skateboard design was their ID.3 in Europe this year, but the ID.4 will be the first on this platform in North America starting in 2021. And it's bringing with it 201 or 302 horsepower, depending on the package, 310 foot-pounds of torque, 0 to 60 in 8 seconds, 250 miles of range, and it starts at $40,000. So yeah, again, the range could be better, but I'm pretty positive on this car, and I'm certainly positive on the turn that Volkswagen is making with it in this whole MEB platform. It's also worth noting that they're the only car company outside of Tesla that has their own charging network, that being the Electrify America network. And this is Volkswagen. They know how to make cars, and they know how to make a lot of them, so this is a big deal. Now, getting back to the new, fun, exciting players in the EV market, Lucid is finally going to be hitting the streets with their Lucid Air Dream Edition, which is finally going to be going into production in 2021. The Lucid Air is just another in a long line of Tesla killers that have been touted over the years, but this one's notable because it's actually headed up by a former chief engineer behind the Model S, and it's definitely a competitor to it. The Lucid Air's had some setbacks over the years, but it's a gorgeous car. It looks like it's straight out of the future, but even more impressive is the battery tech in this thing. Lucid is the only battery supplier to the Formula E Racing League, so unlike a lot of companies that are still catching up with their battery technology, Lucid really knows what they're doing. Which is why they can boast an insane 517 miles of range with a massive 113 kilowatt-hour battery pack that can handle up to 300 kilowatt fast charging and allows vehicle-to-grid charging, making this the most future-proof car on this list. It'll get 1,080 horsepower with its dual motor version. They are working on a tri-motor version that'll get even more. 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds. Again, this is supercar territory. 168 mile per hour top speed with a 0.21 drag coefficient that's like the best out there, which is why it gets such great efficiency. But it does come with a $140,000 price tag for the Air Grand Touring Edition. But they are kind of following the Tesla model by starting with a super expensive car and then going down in price from there. They have a 2022 model that's going to be $80,000. So yeah, it's still out of most people's price range, and it's only going to be limited production, but I felt like it was worth including on this list because it's a very innovative car with some really cool specs. So now let's talk about the BMW iX. Okay, so BMW does deserve some credit because they've had a pretty solid electric car out there since 2013 with the i3. The problem with the i3 is that it looks like this. This looks like a regular BMW got attacked by a swarm of bees like Macaulay Culkin at the end of My Girl. Look, I know this car has its fans. I'm not one of them. Okay, look, to be fair, I probably have a chip on my shoulder here because I've been interested in environmentally friendly cars and electric cars for a really long time. But it seems like automakers just went out of their way to make their environmentally friendly cars as weak and feckless and emasculating as possible. And just the i3 is the perfect example of this. I mean, this is BMW that we're talking about. They know how to make gorgeous cars. They're kind of known for making gorgeous cars, and they finally give us an electric one. They give us this eye cancer? F*** out of here. It also only gets 153 miles of range, which wasn't bad in 2013, but now it's kind of laughable. But next year, BMW is getting serious with the new iX SUV. Based on the iNext concept, the iX will be the first model built on BMW's new ground-up electric skateboard design, which future models will also be based on. And it boasts some impressive specs: 500 horsepower, an impressive range of 375 miles, 0 to 60 in 4.8 seconds, and it does have a price tag of $93,000. I mean, it's a BMW. So yeah, the price tag is up there, but it's a pretty serious car, and I guess, you know, there's always the i3 if you want a cheaper option. So yeah, like with Volkswagen, this is not just a new model from a traditional OEM. This is an entirely new platform that a whole new series of models will be based off of. So models that will be less expensive probably. So this is a big deal. Now let's jump over to the Audi Q4 e-tron. So Audi is a subdivision of Volkswagen, and Audi in 2009 kind of split off their own subdivision called e-tron. This is basically the designation that they use for all of their electric vehicles. It's also the French word for shit. So the e-tron's been out since 2018. There have been a few different variants of it, but the Q4 e-tron that's coming out next year is noteworthy because it's going to be built on, say it with me, the Volkswagen MEB platform. Starting to see why these platforms are so important? It's a luxury family SUV featuring front and wheel motors that will get you 300 horsepower, 280 miles of range, and a 0 to 60 of 6.3 seconds. Now these are not mind-blowing specs, but when you factor in the price tag of $45,000, that's not too bad, especially when you consider the cost again of gas and maintenance being lower, and there's probably going to be some incentives that can bring it down even further. And last but not least, the Tesla Cybertruck. I know. The Tesla Cybertruck might be the most polarizing vehicle ever made. Some people think it's amazing, some people think it looks like a coffin painted by Picasso, but there's also a big split on when this thing's actually going to come out. Because we know the Cybertruck is going to be built at the new Terra factory outside of Austin, and the Terra factory, as of this recording, looks like this. So, is this factory going to be up and running in time to get the Cybertruck out in 2021? That's the big question. Although, for reference, it looked like this. So, there is progress being made. And by the way, the guy who put this out, I'll put his link down in the description below, he basically just does drone videos of the Terra factory building. So if you want to follow the progress, you can follow his channel. You can see it happen in real time. Now, they got the Model Y production up and going at the Shanghai factory way faster than anybody thought they would. This is China, obviously, but maybe they're getting better at building factories. They're doing a lot of it right now. You know, pieces for this are not going to be able to be stamped out like they are with the Model 3 and Model Y. This is stainless steel. They're going to have to cut and fold in new ways. And the idea behind that was to make it simpler and cheaper to make. But being the brand new thing, there's probably going to be some kinks in the process they're going to have to figure out. It's going to be a whole thing. So I'm expecting delays. I'm putting it at about 80% that it's going to get pushed off into 2022. But if and when it does come out in 2021, the specs on this thing, it's the daddy of all daddies. We're talking 756 horsepower, 14,000 pounds of towing, a 0 to 60 in 2.9 seconds, and a range of 500 miles. Now this is the tri-motor all-wheel drive version. That'll set you back about $70,000. There is a dual motor. They'll be getting 300 miles of range for $50,000, and about a year later you can get the cheapest model, the rear-wheel drive, for about $40,000. And the range on that one's kind of low at just around 250 miles. I still think that the design of the Cybertruck is bonkers, but you know, I really wonder, like, once it gets out on the road and people get used to seeing it, it might become a whole thing. Crazier things have happened. All right, so that's 10 new offerings that are coming out in 2021, but here's the deal. That's not even the half of it. Like, literally, that's not even half of it. I'm gonna have to lightning round the rest of these things. Like the Audi e-tron GT, which is another e-tron variant. This is not based on the MEB platform. It actually shares a lot of DNA with the Porsche Taycan. The BMW i4, which is a sporty four-door sedan based on the iX platform. The Seat El Born, which I'm 90% sure I'm saying that wrong. They're a Spanish company under the VW umbrella. This one's based on that MEB platform. The Porsche Taycan Cross Turismo, which is a variant of the Taycan. The Renault Twingo ZE, which is a tiny European car with a very low range, only 150 miles. The Dacia Spring, another tiny European car with an even lower range of 140 miles. The Lightyear 1, which is kind of a niche car that features solar panels and a 450-mile range, probably doesn't belong on this list because it's going to be a very small production run. The Hummer EV Edition 1, this is kind of a showpiece. The rollout of this in general will take years, but they do have a version coming out in 2021. The Mercedes EQC, which is overexpensive and underpowered, below 200-mile range, kind of a joke. Then there's the Bollinger B1 and B2. They're kind of like Rivian, but they're geared more toward utility. They've got some really cool features and a good range, but a $125,000 price tag. The Byton M-Byte and K-Byte are excessively tech-heavy cars designed in Germany, engineered in California, and built in China. This is a new company, so we'll see what they come out with. The Lordstown Endurance is a Rivian competitor with an interesting design. It's got a motor in every wheel. It's actually very unlikely it'll come out in 2021, but they're calling it their 2021 model. There's the Mazda MX-30, which is a crossover for the European market with some cool suicide half-back doors. And the Volvo XC40 Recharge. This is an electric variant of their XC40 SUV with 200 plus miles of range. Okay, so those are all new models of electric cars that are coming out in 2021, on top of the already record-breaking number of electric cars on the market in 2020. And even more importantly, most of these are major mass-produced releases by major automakers. All right, so yes, 2021 looks like it's going to be a massive year for electric vehicles, but let's put this into perspective just a little bit, because right now, even though there's all this momentum behind EVs, it still only accounts for 3% of car sales. But according to JP Morgan, they predict that 20% of cars will be electric by 2030. That means that in the next 10 years, literally 1 out of every 5 cars on the road could be an electric car. So yeah, the cost of these cars is still pretty high, but the price is coming down. I mean, in 2011, you had the Roadster getting 244 miles of range for $250,000. Now, that's around $40,000. Plus, as used cars start to enter the market, there's going to be more opportunities than ever for the average person to be able to afford an EV. Plus, the battery technology is continuing to improve all the time. Tesla just announced their 4680 cell, which could revolutionize the efficiency of their cars. Plus, solid-state batteries seem to be having a new breakthrough every few months. QuantumScape just announced their version. This is where all the momentum is happening in the car world right now. Traditional OEMs that used to do everything they could to not make electric cars are now scrambling to put their own EVs in the market. You know, we live in a world where disruptions are happening so frequently and so hard, and we're seeing all these huge companies just completely fall apart, that even the most stalwart companies now understand that you've got to be able to roll with the times unless you want to wind up as being the next blockbuster. So, is 2021 the tipping point? Is this going to be the year when everything changes? In so many ways, don't you hope so? It might not be the tipping point, but it definitely looks like a tipping point. And as somebody who's been a fan of electric cars all this time, it's really nice to have something to look forward to. And now something that gets me when I look at these EVs that are entering the market, they're very tech heavy. They're basically computers on wheels. And as they become more mainstream and people get more used to them, it's probably going to shape the way we look at cars, less as something, you know, mechanical, but like a piece of technology. And of course, whenever you talk about computers, you have to start thinking about security, and that's where ExpressVPN comes in. ExpressVPN hides your computer from the outside world by making you look like you're somewhere else by connecting you to a virtual private network. It's fast, super easy to install. I was able to do it with no problem, so if you're even just a little bit competent, it'll be a breeze. And it just works. It's totally in the background. You just turn it on and keep doing your thing like normal. In fact, it's kind of better than normal because it lets you do some things that you couldn't do before. For example, have you ever been browsing YouTube and seen that there's a video you want to watch but you can't because of copyright laws in your country? Well, ExpressVPN gives you the ability to make it look like you're in a different country. So all you have to do is just change what country you're from and magically those videos appear. It works on Netflix too. Like, did you know that people in the UK can watch Rick and Morty on Netflix? Well, with ExpressVPN, you can too. All you have to do is connect to a server in the United Kingdom, refresh the page, boom, there it is. Anyway, if any of that's got you curious, you can get 3 months for free of ExpressVPN if you go to expressvpn.com/Joe Scott. Like I said, it's quick, it's easy, you set it up, and then you don't have to think about it anymore. And you know what? There's enough stuff to stress about these days. That can be one thing you can cross off your list. And who knows, maybe someday they'll make a version for electric cars and you'll be ahead of the game. So yeah, expressvpn.com/Joe Scott, 3 months free, links down in the description. All right, big thanks to ExpressVPN for supporting this video, and a huge shout out to the answer files on Patreon that are helping me grow this channel, allowing me to have a team and forming a really awesome community. I love you guys. There's a lot of names for me to get through because I want to get everybody caught up before the end of the year. So let's go. Let's murder some names here. We got Rotary Jones, Waylon Williams, Jeffrey Giuliani, Joseph Farrell, Jeff King, Peter Codron, Christopher Mills, Ethan Martinez, Peter Sadel, Hansa Dvorsky, Brett Williamson, Daniel Gierskerdorf, you're welcome, Jerry Taylor, David Saldana, Charles McBride, Amy Eisingminger, Isaac Banks, Anthony Bainey, William F. Feige, Chris Peterson, Bernard Shaw, Jamie, Richard Cookierson, Kyle McPherson, Jim Leah, and Kevin Freeman. Thank you guys so much. If you'd like to join them, get early access to videos, get Patreon exclusive content and live streams and whatnot, you can just go to patreon.com/answerswithjoe. Also, t-shirts available at the store at answerswithjoe.com/store. If you like your EV stuff, there's plenty of stuff like that there. There's branded stuff if you're just a fan of the channel and whatnot. I appreciate that too, but it does support the channel, supports a great designer over in Prague, and it's just a lot of fun. And it's probably too late for Christmas gifts, but still, maybe you got a gift card or something. Anyway, go check it out. Answerswithjoe.com/store. I'll get through this. Please do like and share this video if you liked it, and if this is your first time here, Google thinks you'll like that one, and they've been watching you, so they know. There's also others probably down on the side that it's recommending, and it's got my face on it. You can go check it out, and if you do like it, I encourage you to subscribe. I come back with videos every Monday. And on a personal note, look, this has been a trying year for all of us, myself included, but the channel has grown quite a bit. I don't know, it might actually be at 1 million by the time this video comes out. It's very close either way, but I just want to say thank you. If you have been a follower of this channel over the last year and leaving comments and thumbs ups and all that stuff, guys, I cannot express enough how much I appreciate you and the fact that I get to do this for you. And I'm looking forward to doing it more next year. And with any luck, we'll be able to blow it out and do even bigger, better stuff for you. So I'm really excited about it. Deeply from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate all of you. Thank you so much for letting me do this for you. And that's it. You guys go out there, have an eye-opening rest of the week, stay safe, have a wonderful Christmas if you celebrate it or anything else that you celebrate, and New Year, and I will see you in 2021. All right, love you guys. Take care.